Be'ezat Hashem, we're back at the Limud from Sefer HaShem. Today is the 16th of the month of Shvat, which is Friday, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, the 6th day of the week of Parshat Shabbat Itro. We're continuing in Sefer Yirat HaShem from Rav Moshe Amber Rav Shalom, a little bit Musar before Shabbat, L'Kedushat Shabbat Kodesh. So the Rabbi continues, כשאמר למשה, מי השם אשר ישמע בקולו נהיה לו שול חזק. Okay, we said yesterday that Paro was punished immediately for questioning who is Hashem. Okay? וגם בבוקר השכים כשהוא יצא. So we said Paro got immediately punished going to the restroom. He received diarrhea in the morning. I mean, in afternoon when Moshe approached them. And also the next day, וגם בבוקר השכים כשהוא יצא המימה להשתין על שפת הנילוס. נזדמן לו משה. So Moshe Rabbeinu also approached him there, we said yesterday. וגם המצרים שהיו עובדים לצוען, כתוב כי תועבת מצרים כל רועה צאן. שחטו את אלוהיהם. So everything, what inspired Moshe? The biggest thing that inspired Itro, the biggest thing that inspired Itro to become a ger was the fact that he realized that there's midah keneged midah. Right? In English they call it what goes around comes around. And that was what Itro noticed. And by the way, all 10 makot were in that realm. Each one of the makah over there, it's explained in many Mefarshim, was actually exactly that was the route. Midah keneged midah. Whatever the Mitzrayim did to the Jewish people, that's how the Mitzrayim punished. וזה שדרשו חכמי זיכרונו לברכה מוציא אסירים בכושרות. Right? One second, let's see what was the answer. Let's see. Merge. Okay. No, I'm here. We all merged over here. זהו אלוהים שעובדים אותו. Okay. וזה שדרשו חכמי זיכרונו לברכה. Gentlemen, if you could put yourself on mute, this way I don't hear interruptions, if you don't mind. Okay, זהו שהאסירים בכושרות. אסירים אלו ישראל שיצאו לחירות. So we say that the Hashem frees the people who are bound. This is who? It's talking about the Jewish people who were bound. בכושרות בשירות, בכיר למצרים, בשירות לישראל. So, בכיר למצרים. So when Hashem took us out of Egypt, he made sure that they were crying. As we remember, it says that in the night of Makat Bechorot, that there was no house that did not have a Bechor, a firstborn die in it. And sometimes there were more than first Bechorim, because we know that the Egyptians were very much shtufei zima, they were very much busy. One of the things that we know that when people have a lot of money, they are very crazy and they're looking for enjoyment. As we see lately, this guy, what's his name? Mr. Banks, the one that Friedman Banks, somebody that ripped off $200 billion from people with a fake, what's his name? Was recently on the news, right? The guy, his last name was Mr. Banks. He's some Friedman guy who stole a lot of money with.
Jewish guy?
Jewish guy? Sounds like a Jewish guy. Who else is going to do that? That he was busy with not the stealing money part. The part that he was busy with what they found out, it was publicized, busy too much with Zima. They were busy with, they were in Bahamas. He moved, it was a cryptocurrency fraud, no? It was just literally like 6 months ago. Somebody stole 200 billion from people, something like that. It was a whole scam. It was all over the news. Mr. Banks, they called him. And again, this is what people do. When they have too much money, they right away to face zima. The first thing is they're looking for different types of pleasures. Okay, and that's what the Egyptians were. Why am I bringing it down? The Chazal tell us that in a house there would be not one person dying, sometimes 9. Somebody would have 15 children, all 10 died. 10 children died on Makat Bechorot. I don't understand. What's going on here? How come, what's his name? This woman had 10 boys and they all died. They're not firstborns from the man, from the husband, right? So the Chazal tell us, no, you don't understand what was happening. In Egypt, Again, one of the biggest thing was that the woman was, there was so much money, they didn't have to do much. They were busy with, what were they busy? Entertaining themselves. So what would they do? How did Hashem choose who's the firstborn? The firstborn was not from the mother, the firstborn was from the father. So those girls, those wives, would be busy with other young men just to be entertained. And it happened to be one woman would have 10 firstborns from each man that she played around with. So all of a sudden, the husband is finding out that his wife was, he thought it was his children that he was supporting. It was children of somebody else. So there was no, not possibility that somebody didn't die in every household. In Egypt, that's how it was. So there was a lot of Becher in Mitzrayim, V'shirut l'Israel. There was a lot of crying to the Egyptians, but a lot of singing by the Jewish nation. Mitzrayim buchim al makat bechorem u'bizayon Eloheim. And the Egyptians were not just crying, they were not just mourning that all their children were dying, that also their what's his name? Their gods were being destroyed, as we know that over there. Hashem took the punishment. He destroyed on that night not just the flesh of humans, he destroyed all the idols. V'Israel shirim v'korin et Hallel, and the Jewish people were rejoicing and saying Hallel and dancing. V'aklavim azei nefesh נובחים בהוצאת מצרים בחצי הלילה ומשחקים בעצמות וגוררים בהם מתחת רגליהם. So, בחוצות מצרים בחצי הלילה, what would happen? The dogs would go out, and the wild dogs, they would see any Egyptian that was outside at that night, they would jump on them, and they would tear their flesh apart. And it was amazing that was why does a dog bark? Especially it happens at night. Many times there are dinim at night. Why don't we say Tehillim at night? Why don't we learn Chumash at night? All those things, right? Those are the upper realms, the spiritual upper realms, Tehillim, the Chumash. But at night before Chatzot, it's a time of dinim, and that's where most people die, by the way, at that time. Most people in the world, natural death occurs at that time, because that's when the power of the Sitra Achra has allowance in this world, from the Tzet Kochavim till Chatzot, approximately. So, why do Klavim bark? The dogs bark because they actually have not just sense, they actually see Malach HaMavet. They see the traveling of the spirit that goes and takes away the neshamot from people. So that night, the dogs were going wild, because all the dogs of Egypt were going up. Besides, they had a spell. In Egypt, they had a special spell that the cities were so much fortified that it says in the Torah that nobody could go out of Egypt ever. So Midrash explains over there that if a slave would just run out, thinking that he's free from Egypt, he would have something coming. There were rocks, there were magic, there were black magic all over Egypt, that the dogs would start barking if anybody just came close to the border of escape. And they would immediately, anybody would escape, they catch him and they would kill him and whatever, the whole things. So Hashem made a Keneged Midah over here, that on that night, that all the dogs were going wild, on the death of all the Egyptians, and if any Egyptian was in the street, they would tear him apart. However, the Torah says something special, something beautiful, that Hashem made the dog realize if they saw a Jew, there was no dog even barking on the Jews' side, meaning there would be on one side of the street Mitzrayim and one side of Mitzrayim, the Jews, and Hashem was very the dogs would be very respectful of a Jew. It would not even bark, and because of that, even though the nature of the dog is to bark, but Hashem did not want to be mavhil. Hashem did not want a Jew to be scared, and the dogs did not scare the Jews, so Hashem gave him a special reward. What's the special reward? The reward is, the Torah says, anytime when we have a dead animal, right? Lakelef tishluchun, or a trefa. If a shochet did shchita, and the animal became not kosher, it turns out to be it's not a kosher animal, trefa. Let's say his lungs were damaged or something. It says over there, lakelef tishluchun, we must send the dog, send the animal to be flat, we must feed the dogs with it. And that's a reward for they were very kind to the Jewish people, not barking at the time we were coming out of Egypt. So I want to concentrate today just a little bit before Shabbat on that. What does means Hakarat Tov? Hakarat Tov, here we have Hashem is commending the Jewish nation. He's commanding the Jewish nation to be so cautious, so careful, that even a dog, what is a dog? The dog is he's doing his job, right? He sees meat, he wants to eat meat. He sees some stranger, he barks, he protects, or he that. But Hashem says, no, here, the dogs went out of their way, you go out of your way. It says over there's a big machloket on Shabbat. If somebody, let's say, there's hunters or something, right? So the hunters would be shooting at ducks, or whatever. Or sometimes the ducks are flying and the eagle comes there and he tries to kill the duck in the mid-air, right? And the ducks got damaged. However, the duck dies. Even on Shabbat, there is a tzad in the Gemara that says that if you find a dead bird on Shabbat, where we know that you're not allowed to touch anything that was not there before Shabbat, right? So one opinion says if a dead bird fell down in front of your yard, on your property. So one opinion says, yes, you could take the bird and throw it to your dogs, let them eat the dead bird. The other opinion says, no, it's not allowed because it's not mukhan, it was not prepared for you before Shabbat, so it's muktzah. But there is actual opinion that says no, that even if it's a tzad shel muktzah, he says we're not concerned about muktzah. Hashem told us that if we have a trefa, we have an animal that we cannot eat, that became not kosher, we should give it to an animal. And how far does it go? Even on Shabbat, there is a tzad to say that you could feed that bird to your animal on Shabbat. How much hakarat tov we have for even a creature that doesn't have a mind. The dog doesn't know tomorrow. He doesn't know today. He doesn't have what's his name, an ability. Yes, today we are understanding more that the dog has some connection to his owner. Otherwise, he would bite him also. Why he bites a stranger only, right? So there is some connection. Maybe he's afraid because he's not going to get food or whatever it is, whatever the connection is. But still, he doesn't have human feelings. This animal, and Hashem tells us you have to go and care for this animal because they didn't bark for you 3,335 years ago when you came out of Egypt, 3,337 years ago, and so you see so much hakarat tov we have to give them. How much?
To the dogs, Rabbi.
Yeah, to the dogs. How much? What? What do you want to say, Moshe?
I said only dogs.
No,
Other animals. Don't look at this when we walk out of Egypt.
Yeah. Listen to this. 3,337 years ago, the dogs were barking on one side of the street at the Goyim, and they left the Jews alone. They didn't bark at us. So Hashem says, because of that, you have to give them. Even there's a question on Shabbat, you have muktzah, a new bird fall down on your property dead, you could take it and give it to your dog. There's an opinion that says that. So how much more so are we to our family members, our wives, our children? Even they make you crazy. Your wife makes you nuts. She gave you a baby, whatever. She gave you one child. She gave you a future. You have an existence now, right? You have. I'm talking to myself, right? My wife, food. You have food for Shabbat. You didn't. Yeah, technically speaking, the man doesn't need a woman for that. Technically speaking, but we didn't need the dogs not to bark at us in Mitzrayim. But still, the dogs didn't bark at us. And Hashem says they didn't bark. You have to owe them hakarat tov. Here, a wife, what is they didn't bark? To bark, it's energy. So you might say, wait a minute, it was good for the dog not to bark. He didn't waste his energy. So why should I owe him anything? Hashem says, no, he didn't bark. It's his nature to bark, but he didn't bark. So give him meat. Your wife, she doesn't owe you anything. If we take a look at our Ketuvah, we owe her everything. It says everything.
Yeah, she doesn't have to give anything.
There's a Chacham over here, we're working on this, and talking to myself, gentlemen. Talking to myself. We're barking at our children. How much hakarat tov we owe to people who are around us? Shabbat Shalom. Bezat Hashem, have a wonderful day. Those who need to learn, to work, those who are staying to learn with us more, Ilchot Shabbat, we're going to start right now. Shabbat Shalom.